Mandy and I welcome you back to The Chosen's blended harmony of the gospel. We are on day 15, part 2, walking on the water. Walking on the water, his disciples went down to the sea and got into the boat and started to cross the sea to Capernaum. Darkness had already set in, but Jesus had not yet come to them. A high wind arose and the sea began to churn. Jesus was alone on the land. The boat was in the middle of the sea, some distance from the land, and he saw them straining at the oars, battered by the waves because the wind was against them. Very early in the morning, after he rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea. He came to them, walking on the sea, and wanted to pass by them. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. Immediately, Jesus spoke to them. "Have courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter answered, "command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." After climbing out of the boat, Peter started walking on the water and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand, caught hold of him, and said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. They were completely astounded because they had not understood about the loaves. Instead, their hearts were hardened. Those in the boat worshipped him and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." When they had crossed over, they came to shore at Gennesaret. When the man of that place recognized him, they alerted the whole vicinity and brought to him all who were sick. They begged him that they might only touch the end of his robe, and as many as touched it were healed. They hurried throughout that region and began to carry the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. Wherever he went, into villages, towns, or the country, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch just the end of his robe, and everyone who touched it was healed. Lots of great things in this story as well. Okay, so Jesus is on the land, and they're in the boat, and they're in the middle of the sea, in the middle of a storm. And it's interesting, it says that they've been battered by the waves because the wind was against them. Have you ever been battered by waves? Do you feel like the wind is against you? I felt like that a lot lately. But just know that he is with you in the storm. Also, it says, very early in the morning, they had rowed for 3 or 4 miles. They got in the boat at night. Now it's the middle of the night. They have been rowing and rowing and rowing. I mean, I don't really like to be in the rain. I can't imagine being in a boat, being all bounced around and rowing for several hours. Really hard rowing because the wind is against you. So they are just physically exhausted. They're mentally exhausted. They're probably thinking, why did we get in this boat? What is going on? And then they see Jesus. But they think at first that he's a ghost. But then Jesus says to them, "Have courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." And who's the first to reply? Peter. "Lord, if it's you," Peter answered, "command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." So I love Peter. He's the first one to say, "Command me to come and I'll come." And he does. I mean, Jesus says, "Come." So he gets out of the boat. I'm sure the other disciples were like, "What are you doing? This is crazy. You're going to drown." But for a couple steps, he was walking on the water. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was fine and he was walking on the water. But what happened? He stopped looking at Jesus. He started looking around at all his problems, all the winds and the waves, and that's when he began to sink. But then Jesus reached out his hand and caught hold of him and said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" Have you ever had an instance like that? I have. Just think, he sets us up and he's like going to be taking care of it, but then we just doubt him. So this reminds me that I just always want to be keeping my eyes on Jesus, not the winds and the waves and all the troubles around me, and just realize that he's got a plan, he's got an answer, and that it's going to work out. Then they got in the boat and they were astonished because they did not understand about the loaves. Instead, their hearts were hard. But they did worship in the boat and they said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." So the timing of all this is really interesting, right? They just fed the 5,000. I mean, they saw this huge miracle. They had 5 loaves, 2 fish. Jesus blessed that. And then they went out and fed, could be up to 20,000 people if you do the men, women, and children, because there was 5,000 men. And then they brought back 12 baskets extra. I often wonder where those baskets went, because the next thing is they're in a boat, but they get all wet. But then you think that when they were in the boat, they would remember about the 5,000. You think they would remember that huge miracle, right? right away, they're already doubting. But we do the same thing, right? God brings us through something, our faith is bolstered, and the next thing comes, and then we don't believe again. So hopefully this reminds you that we just want to keep our faith strong and just keep believing that He can do it and not doubt. Because I don't want to hear Him say, "Oh, Nancy, you have little faith." I want Him to see that I am believing in Him and that I have strong faith. But we all fall down sometimes. But the neat thing is, He didn't really chastise them. I mean, He did just say, where is your faith? Because they just did the miracle with the 5,000. But He calmed the storm for them, and then they worshiped because they realized, "You are the Son of the living God." Then the last part of this story just talks about how they go to every town and city. No matter where they go, they're bringing the deaf and the lame and the sick and crippled and everyone to Him because they know that He can heal them. And so I think that's really exciting because people had the faith that He is the Son of God and He can do the miracles. But also, many of those people couldn't get there on your own. If you're blind, you're not going to figure out what town Jesus is in and walk your way there. You need a friend to bring you, right? And if you're crippled and lame, you're not going to hobble your whole way there. You need someone to carry you or have them put you on their donkey or whatever. So there's two parts to that story. There's the people who believed and were healed, but the friend's faith, there was always a friend or a family member bringing people. So who in your life today needs you to bring them to Jesus for healing or encouragement or even just to know Jesus for the first time? So don't forget about that part of the story too. So a lot of great nuggets in here today. I hope you enjoyed the walking on the water and the calming of the storm. And I hope you have faith that is as strong as those disciples, especially Simon Peter's. Have a great day being strong in your faith, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. You can get your own copy of A Blended Harmony of the Gospels by The Chosen simply by going to thechosengifts.com. There you can find all kinds of wonderful merchandise to help build your faith this year. Be sure to check out their devotionals and their Bible studies. Have a blessed day.